Well, welcome to Unit 8. We are going to talk about a lot of things to do with our promotional strategies in this unit. So let's get started. Just a reminder, and I've got my marketing umbrella up here. We've got our marketing mix variables, and that's the umbrella that holds all of our marketing mix variables. We've got people, our customers, the products, price, place, which we discussed in Unit 7. Finally, we can get to the really fun stuff, our promotional strategies. We can't really do those until we have everything else in place because the promotional strategies are how we communicate with our customers. And we want to communicate that total value proposition, which is product, price, and place. The handle that holds up all of the marketing mix variables is our research, and your promotional strategies are going to need research as well. Today, we're going to cover just a few of the promotional strategies. We'll talk more about the other strategies. We've got 5 primary promotional strategies: advertising, public relations, personal selling, sales promotion, and direct marketing. So we're really going to cover advertising and public relations, and we get touch a little bit on sales promotion as well. So let's go ahead and take a look. Let's just talk first a little bit about the role of marketing communications. As I mentioned, it's what most people think marketing is because it's what we are all exposed to as consumers. So we are recipients of a lot of different promotional strategies, and that marketing communication then is directed at us. We don't want to do any marketing communication until we put all of our marketing mix variables in place. Once we develop our marketing communication, it needs to target directly our target market, our consumers. If we have communication that's going out to populations that are not our target market, the communication will fall flat. It will not get noticed because it probably won't be in the appropriate channel to reach the consumer, and the messaging will be off. So we've got to look at that role of how we communicate. It's our effort as a marketer to inform what we're doing, inform about our products, persuade consumers that they want our products, and remind consumers about those products. So I may know about the product, I may be persuaded to buy the product, but I may have forgotten that I want the product. So we've got to have all of these elements: inform, persuade, and remind. So when we look at marketing communications and we look at the total mix of things that I already mentioned quite a bit of them: advertising, sales promotion, events and experiences fall in public relations, but we have public relations and public policy or publicity. And then we have online and social media marketing. Now that's just a channel. So advertising, sales promotion, public relations, all of that can happen in the online environment. Mobile marketing, that's also a channel that we have to reach our consumers with our marketing communication messages. And then direct and database marketing is our direct marketing, and personal selling. So those are the communication mix, the ways in which we inform, persuade, and remind our consumers about our products or services. So looking at those channels that we use, some of the common communication platforms, and this is a slide. If you are going into marketing, you're doing marketing, this is something you might want to keep because it is very helpful and insightful on those communication platforms. So advertising, sales promotion, events and experiences, public relations and publicity, online and social media marketing, mobile marketing, direct database marketing, and personal selling we have all these different ways of utilizing those. So advertising could be print and broadcast. It could be the packaging. It could be when you're sitting in a movie theater and the credits that come up or the information before the movie starts, brochures, booklets. So this slide is very comprehensive of all the different things that we can do to reach our consumer, but it is definitely not all encompassing. So every different little way you can get to your customer, and this is why it's very, very important to have that marketing research and understand your customer, because you will definitely be able to find different ways to reach them or different communication platforms. These are the most common that we utilize. So elements in that communication process, you have the sender, and in the case of what we're looking at and talking about, that sender is typically going to be the company, the marketer who's sending that message. That message gets encoded. And as an example of what encoding might be, you may be putting together a jingle for a television advertisement. That would be that encoding, that jingle. The message or the media then would be the television and advertising. That message gets decoded. So how you receive that message. And it's decoded based on how you view it, listen to it, receive it. It's also decoded based on your breadth of experience and anything that's surrounding you at the time. The receiver should be the target market, the consumer that you want to inform, persuade, or remind. So in this process of sending the message, there's noise all around us, and that noise and that market for that noise just gets more crowded every single day. So you're fighting to get to your consumer with all that noise that they've got from other ads, from the work they're doing, people that are around them, all the things that transpire in a given day. That person receives, that target market, that consumer receives the message. They have a response, and that response is the feedback. They may have questions. They may put a product in a cart on a website. They may actually buy that product. They may ignore it altogether. So there's a lot of different types of feedback that a consumer can give or use in response to the message that they receive. It's important to understand how this communication process works so that you understand how best to send the message to your consumer and to know how to fight the noise that they're hearing and how to respond to the various forms of feedback that that consumer may have. We have a lot of things, a lot of psychology around how consumers receive messages, how they respond to messages, and we have what we call response hierarchy models. The most common response hierarchy model is what we call the AIDA model, the AIDA model. You look at the different stages: cognitive, affective, and behavior. The AIDA model says that we as consumers, first you need to get our attention, then you need to generate interest in for the consumer, interest that they want to find out more about the product. They're going to gather information. They're going to pay attention to the message they receive. Then they can move to desire. Yes, I want to buy that product. And finally, hopefully, you can then get them all the way to the behavioral stage where they take action. The action we want is that they're going to buy the product. That may not be the action that we get. We may get the action of them asking questions. We may get the action of them ignoring it altogether. So lots of different things can take place at each of these stages, but you've got to think about how you put your messaging together in order to get their attention, take them down into the step of getting interest in the product, having the desire, and then taking that action. A couple of things, and here's another sort of flow chart that we have to developing effective communication. Things that we need to do as marketers in order to make our communication with our consumer the most effective we possibly can. That first step is going to be to identify, obviously, your target audience. That's step one. I already mentioned you've got to know your audience in order to be able to effectively communicate with them. You need to set objectives for your communication. And remember, inform, persuade, remind. Those are some common things that we want to set out to do with our consumer. Then you need to design that communication, select your channels. How are you going to get this message to that consumer? Need to have a budget for that because it's going to cost you money to reach that consumer. And then you decide on a media mix. Now, we usually look at integrated marketing communication where we have a variety of media that we're going to use, but we're going to send a similar, consistent message throughout. We want that message to be the same, but we need it to go out in many different ways because remember, there's all that noise that may potentially get in the way of that consumer getting the message that we're sending. So then we need to look at how we're going to measure the results, which media were effective, which media were not effective. We don't want to use media that's not going to be effective. And so then we have to manage that whole process of our integrated marketing communication. How are we going to continue this process? How many messages do we need to send? What is our return on investment based on how we communicated with our consumer? So again, first thing, every step in the marketing process, the first thing is to really understand that target market and then establish your communication objectives. What's the category need? How do we build that brand awareness? How do we influence brand purchase? All of those things have to come into play. Designing that communication strategy means getting a message strategy. What are you going to say? Getting creative strategy. How are you going to get their attention? And then how are you going to get that message to them? What is the source that you're going to use? So some of the creative strategy, remember, inform, persuade, and remind. So you can have informational appeals, you can have transformational appeals, how you take negative or fear versus positive messaging. There are so many creative strategies that we use in that marketing process. But again, it all comes down to understanding your customer. The more you understand them, the better you're able to communicate with them. If you have no information, no understanding of your target market, it's going to be really very difficult to create not only the message, but the creative that's going to get the attention of that consumer. So a lot of market research has to take place in that promotional strategy stage of our marketing mix variables. Messages delivered by attractive or popular sources often get higher attention and recall. This is why a lot of brands have taken to using celebrities or influencers. You'll have models for various things. Again, you want them to be people that are seen as attractive, as aspirational for your target market. So you may pick somebody that your target market has no idea who that person is, and that's not going to be effective at all. So anytime you're setting out to do anything in the promotional strategy area, understanding that consumer and extensive market research is going to be very helpful. A lot of times companies will take their creative and run it through, and we can do it really easily with online promotional strategies through some A/B testing, what's working, what's not working. But if you were to do, let's say, let's go old school and we're going to develop some television commercials, you would want to do some pretty extensive market research with your target market before you go to the trouble of producing the commercials, buying airtime, and putting them out there for that target market. So again, selecting the communication channels, they can be personal communication, such as direct marketing through email or text messages, or non-personal channels, such as if you were going to do a television ad or a radio ad or even a print commercial. My opening slide was a picture of the billboards in Times Square. That's obviously a very non-personal channel, and you're going to have a lot of overreach with that. You're going to reach people that are definitely not your target market, but it does create that brand awareness. Establishing the marketing budget is going to be important, the marketing communication budget. We have four really popular methods of designing a communication budget. The affordable method, here's how much money we have. You could do a percent of sales method. Here's what we sold, so here's what we're going to put towards that. Now, that assumes that your only goal for, or the only thing that helped with sales was your messaging, your promotional strategies, and that's not necessarily true, but percent of sales is a very popular method that a lot of companies use. You may do a competitive parity method, which says our competitor spent this much, therefore we're going to spend that same amount of money. The best method, but the one used probably the least often, is to say, here's what my objectives are for the marketing communication. Here are the tasks that need to be done. And then that's how that budget gets allocated. Very rarely does that happen. Probably the most popular method that gets used the most often is here's how much money we have that we can put towards any kind of marketing communications. So then you need to select the marketing mix. Again, we want to integrate that message across all of our messaging platforms. And so we call it integrated marketing. We want to be consistent with that message. But again, advertising, personal selling, sales promotion, public relations, and direct marketing. Some of these things, like events and experiences, those fall under technically public relations. Online social media and mobile marketing are all channels that we use to reach our consumer. So it's not necessarily a specific communication platform, or it is a communication platform, but it's not one of our promotional strategies. It's a channel of reaching our consumer. So I could do public relations through online or social media. I could do advertising through online or social media. I could do personal selling through online and social media. So all of those can take place in those channels. Database and direct marketing, and then personal selling. So looking at the marketing communication mix characteristics, if we had advertising, it's everywhere. It's going to focus on very specific parts of the brand, whereas sales promotion is going to draw attention and it gives the consumer an incentive to purchase the product. So a lot of times you'll see sales promotion used when you launch a product, because one of the things with sales promotion is trial of a product, and you want to get that consumer to try that product. The problem with sales promotion is that it induces short-term response. It will induce a short-term response of buying that product. So doesn't do a whole lot for consumer loyalty, but it does help to get people to purchase that product. So if you're looking at increasing sales rapidly, sales promotion may be your way to go. When we look at events and experiences, those are things that happen through public relations. It gets that consumer engaged with that product, and it is one of the best ways to get that trial of a product. Public relations is highly credible because it is seen as a sort of a third-party analysis of your product. It's not something you necessarily pay for, where advertising is paid communication, public relations is not. Oftentimes, you can find those hard to reach prospects and you can tell the story. It's a public relations is a great place where you can tell your brand story. When we look at online and social media and mobile, which are definitely channels to reach our consumer, online and social media can be quickly updated. It's inexpensive. It's rich in entertainment, and you have that audience attention. Mobile marketing is seen as something to do if it's time sensitive. Most everybody is on their mobile phone, so it is a really good place to reach consumers. And if you have a mobile app and you can push notifications and things of that nature, and you have something really timely, that's going to be a great channel that you would want to definitely use. Looking at database and direct marketing, it can be personalized. It used to be common to have snail mail. You would get some kind of a flyer in your mailbox. Now we get constant messages through our email, but we also get a lot of text messages. I know I get a lot of text messages. Definitely, when you're using direct or database marketing, make sure that you can customize and personalize that offer as much as possible and have a really good call to action. Personal selling then is mostly for products that you're going to customize. They're going to be maybe a little bit higher price point, and you need that relationship in order to sell those products. You have that direct connection with your consumer. Personal selling is one of the most expensive options in our promotional strategies. So again, it's usually for a little bit higher price point on a product because your return on investment might not be so great if the product doesn't have a higher price point. So setting that communication mix depends on the type of product that you're looking to market, consumer markets versus business markets, and what stage you're in the product life cycle. Are you at introduction, growth, maturity, or decline? Depending on where you are in that product life cycle, you will choose different promotional strategies. I think I already mentioned that a really popular strategy at the introduction stage is going to be sales promotion because a lot of the things that you do in sales promotion are trial of the product. And during that introduction stage, where people aren't familiar with the product, your main goal is to get them to try it. Another thing that we look at in setting the marketing communications mix is the buyer readiness stage. Where are they in this stage of understanding the product? Awareness, comprehension, conviction, order, or reorder. So, depending on where they are in that stage, you might use different forms of your communications. So, if you look at this graph here, this blue color is advertising and publicity, really popular at the awareness stage. So you're going to see a higher usage of advertising and publicity. Sales promotion, again, during that awareness stage, really helpful because you're going to get trial of that product. But remember, sales promotion is also that short-term incentive to purchase the product. So if you're at that reorder stage, you want them to purchase product. And so sales promotion is going to be very effective. And then we see personal selling. Personal selling isn't going to be really helpful at that awareness stage, but it is going to be really helpful when they're at the conviction and order stage where you need that face to face, you need that direct connection with that consumer. Okay, so a couple things to look at with our communication. We need to measure it. Did it work? If it didn't work, we don't want to do it again. If it did work, we want to keep doing it. So some of the things that we need to measure include recognition or recall of the product. We need to look at how many times that customer had to see the message before they took certain actions. And then we want to look at their attitude toward that message, the product, and the company. And finally, the responses that the messaging elicited with the consumer. So, looking at that total integrated marketing communication process, we've got to design around the brand to make sure that that customer or prospect has that relevant messaging and that messaging is consistent every time they see it. We coordinate that media and then we implement that integrated marketing communication plan. So, looking at developing and managing a total advertising program, you've got to set out with your mission, setting those goals and advertising objectives, looking at how much money you have. What are the factors? Again, which stage in the product life cycle are we in? That will determine how much messaging we need. What is our market share and who is that customer base? Who's the competition and how much clutter is out there or how much noise? And then looking at our frequency and what is the substitutionality, that's kind of a hard word to say, of the product. Are there easily and readily available substitutes for the product? That's going to play a major impact on how much money you're going to need to spend. Then we look at the message, we look at the media we're going to use, and finally, we have to measure everything that we do. So, developing an advertising program, we've got to set the advertising objectives, decide on a budget, put that ad campaign together, choose which media. We're going to do old media, television, print, and radio, or are we going to do new media? That would be social, digital, and mobile. How are we going to get that message? And that right there tells you really important to understand our consumer. And finally, we evaluate how effective was the message. Some common advertising objectives, we already talked about these at the very beginning. We want to either inform, persuade, or remind, and in some instances, reinforce what they already know about the product. So determining that advertising budget, remember our different budget methods, and most of the time you're going to see it be as affordable. But we want to look at the stage in the product life cycle. Obviously, introduction, we're going to have to spend way more money than when we're just in that decline and phasing out of the product. We need to look at and consider our market share and the customer base. How easy or difficult is our customer base to reach with our message? How fierce is the competition? If we've got lots of competition, going to have to spend a little bit more money. And also, what kind of clutter is out there? What's getting in the way of our message getting to our target market consumer? We want to look at our advertising frequency. How often do we have to do it? And then again, that product substitution ability. Is it easily substituted with another product? So major media types, I already talked about old media versus new media. Old media, again, is going to be television, print, and radio. New media is going to be social, website, and mobile. But we can also look at some other types of media, such as print with our magazines or our direct mail. Outdoor usually also falls under print. And you can see, I'm not going to read this slide to you, but this is another good slide that you could save for future, which has the advantages and limitations of each of these different channels or media that you might choose. Placing advertising options, billboards, public spaces, product placement. You see a lot of product placement in television and movies and so forth. Famous story about product placement was the Reese's Pieces. So way back, we're going way back to the 80s to the movie E.T. And E.T., the producers, the people working on that movie had gone to M&M's, and there was a scene in there where E.T. is getting this candy, and they wanted it to be M&M's. But M&M said, "This is the stupidest movie we've ever seen. We're not going to have our product in it. We don't want to be affiliated with it." And so at the time, there was a new but very little known candy called Reese's Pieces. And so it was very similar in style and design to M&M's, and so the movie E.T. chose Reese's Pieces. Well, E.T. went on to be a very, 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 very successful movie. So when it launched in video form for people to take home and consume and watch whenever, M&M's came back to the movie and said, "Can we get the Reese's Pieces dubbed out and put the M&Ms in place?" And the movie said, "Absolutely not." It was a movie that launched Reese's Pieces, and it was back in the day when product placement was still fairly new and not a lot of people were doing it. So it was a real bargain for Reese's Pieces and ended up being a huge and wildly successful thing for them. The other type of placing for advertising is point of purchase, having products available right where consumers are buying or checking out. So when you're in the grocery store and you pick an aisle to check out your groceries, you'll see a lot of things vying for your attention that you can pick up at the last minute and add on to your purchase. So product point of purchase is a big deal. And you'll see even throughout stores, different product point of purchase displays to draw attention to the products and hopefully elicit purchase of them. So when you're choosing media, there are a lot of non-traditional media. There are a lot of ways, and we used to call it guerrilla marketing, lots of different ways that you can get to and reach your consumer. This is where understanding and doing your market research of the consumer becomes critically important because you can find all different ways to reach them. I had, for my coffee bar, I had a triathlete team approach me. Would I be willing to give them free coffee if they promoted my coffee on their social media? And then they also put my product logo on their triathlete kits. So during a race, everybody's following them in the run or maybe in the bike, and on their kits is a big logo for my coffee company. So that can be helpful to have that non-traditional media. Media planners choose those cost-effective vehicles, look at different ways to get product messaging out there that might be a little unique or novel, such as the one I just mentioned. So pretty much any place that could receive a marketing message is fair game. And again, it just depends on who your target market is and what is one of the best ways to reach them. So one of the things that we look at is how we're going to schedule the messaging, the timing, and how that gets out there. You could do it continuously. You could do it flighting, where you may have it go out for a really long time and then nothing for a while. You may have it concentrated. So you may say, "Oh, I'm going to have this messaging go out for consistently during the months of March, April, and May, but then we're not going to do anything for January, February, March, or January and February." That would be an example of flighting. Concentrated is to have it just very concentrated in a specific time frame. And then pulsing would be, I'm going to advertise a lot, then a little, then a lot, then a little, then a lot, then a little. So lots of different ways that you can look at the timing and allocation. And again, it depends on that target market. We've got to go always back to that customer, what we know about them, and how we're going to reach them in the best way possible. If we look at evaluating the advertising effectiveness, we've got to look at the copy testing, we've got to look at sales impact research, tons of information and ways that we can research to make sure we're not wasting our money on our advertising. We want to make sure that we're effective in everything that we're doing. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about sales promotion. Again, I already mentioned it's mostly short term, really looking at getting that quick purchase. So you've got to be really careful how you use it because you don't want the customer to think, well, I'm just going to wait till the product goes on sale. Or, oh, I've been overpaying this whole time. It should actually be this cost. So you've got to be really careful how you use sales promotion, but it can be really effective in generating sales during off-peak hours or getting consumers to try a product. Those are ways that we typically look at using sales promotion. So here are another slide that you may want to save. Some really typically used consumer promotional tools. So samples, coupons, any kind of cash offer like a rebate, price packs where you get cents off deals on the label or the package, premiums where you're going to get an incentive to purchase a product like a free mail-in or a self-liquidating premium, and then frequency products our frequency programs. I have one at my coffee bar. Most companies have these frequency programs or loyalty rewards now, where you incentivize your consumers to continue to come back and purchase products from you. So I have different tiers or levels. Once consumers spend a certain amount, they're going to get a percent off. So I have customers that have spent so much, they get 10% off every time they purchase something, but they get different rewards in different levels. And I had one really good customer the other day. I said, you get 10% off, but you also have all these other rewards. He said, no, I want to save them. I want to see how much I can accumulate. It's kind of a game to me. And so it's fun to watch how consumers react to those frequency programs. Again, you have some additional tools that we might use, price off, straight discount or list prices, allowances. These are usually trade promotions. So an allowance would be, and I think I mentioned this in another lecture, where you go into Best Buy and you're wanting definitely to buy the Samsung television, and then the LG television gets sold to you because the person doing the selling or helping you with understanding the TVs gets some kind of an allowance for how many they sell. The other one, whoops, let me go back. The other one is free goods. You can offer extra cash or extra cases based on how many they off order. So let's just say I order 12, I'm going to get that 13th case free. Some Salesforce promotional tools, trade shows and conventions, sales contests, or any kind of specialty advertising. You might have low-cost items that they get when they make a purchase of a product. So sort of developing your sales promotion, you want to look at the size of the incentive, your total budget, the timing, how you're going to distribute things, and how long you're going to allow the sales promotion to run. So looking at implementation and evaluating, you want to look at lead time, sell-in time. You want to definitely constantly be getting that research from your sales data or your customer surveys. Really going to be very important for that. Okay, let's look at some public relations things, events and experiences. So event objectives. If you're going to have an event, you need to make sure you have some objectives with them. Again, understanding that customer is critical. You want people to get information about your company, the brand, the name, the story behind it. you want to enhance that corporate image. So that's going to be one of the most important things and one of the only reasons you want to do events. You want to connect personally with those customers and you want them to remember and understand the brand that you're representing. So, a couple things that you could do for events. You could do sponsorships, choosing that event, designing the program, and then measuring your activities that you do. So, let's just say you decide to sponsor an event, you get your name put up on a banner. What other things can you then do to make that banner more effective? Because you want to be able to measure and make sure that they have brand recall, that they have positive reference points about your brand, that they are taking home that sponsorship that you did as brand equity, understanding the story and being able to relate and have good feelings and emotions about the brand. You want to create experiences where possible for brands, particularly when you're launching a product. You want to have those good experiences so they have those good memories and recall about your product. Okay, let's look at public relations. So, some public relations functions. You have press relations, you have product publicity, corporate communications, and that's something that goes out throughout your corporation, usually internal, but you can also do external corporate communications through annual reports and things of that nature. You might want to do some lobbying, getting people behind your product, and then you might have counseling that also comes into play with public relations. So oftentimes you'll do public relations when you're launching new products, maybe you're repositioning a mature product, and that would happen in that decline stage of the product life cycle. You might want to influence target groups, build that corporate image. If you have problems that you need to defend, public relations is typically the way to go. So, some decisions that you have to make. What are your objectives for your PR program? Again, what is your messaging? And remember, you have to have that integrated marketing communication. So it has to be consistent throughout. And then you want to evaluate results. So, again, another slide that you might choose to save some of those major tools in your PR arsenal that you have, things that fall under public relations. A lot of information. We have way more of our marketing communication tools that we can use, our promotional strategies. And we'll be talking about those as we get further along in the course. So you'll see those introduced next week.